All right, gotta love daily news, right? Today we're going to take a deep dive into all things cybersecurity, AI, and global tech policy. I'm talking ransomware attacks, big malware takedowns, even a peek at President Biden's last cybersecurity moves before leaving office.
It really does feel like every day there's something new happening, doesn't it?
That's the truth.
Yeah.
So let's just jump right in, shall we? First up, we've got a red alert for anyone using those Amazon Web Services S3 buckets.
Oh, yes, the S3 buckets.
Seeing a new wave of ransomware attacks specifically targeting those.
Yeah, and it's really unfortunate because most of these attacks are happening because of misconfigured access permissions, like literally leaving the door wide open.
So the lesson here is obviously lock down your S3 buckets, people. We're talking double-checking those permissions, setting up that multi-factor authentication, maybe even an extra layer of security like encryption. What do you think?
Absolutely. I think about it this way. You wouldn't leave your front door unlocked, would you?
Nope, wouldn't do that. Speaking of security slip-ups, even those big web giants aren't immune.
Oh, you're talking about the GoDaddy situation.
Yeah, the FTC is calling them out for some serious failings that they say led to multiple data breaches.
It is a big deal and definitely unsettling considering how much sensitive data GoDaddy handles for millions of customers, right? Website domains, those email accounts, all that.
I think it's definitely a wake-up call for anyone who thinks, oh, it'll never happen to me. This stuff can happen to anyone.
Absolutely. There is some good news.
Oh, yeah.
The FTC is pushing GoDaddy to step up their game with security. So things like multi-factor authentication, regular system updates, all of that good stuff, at least we're seeing some positive action coming out of it, right?
I like that. Positive action. Very good. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit and talk about the cybersecurity hiring process.
Ooh, that's a tough one these days.
You know, I've heard it's kind of a mess out there, both for companies trying to hire and the professionals looking for cybersecurity roles.
Yeah, it's a whole system problem, you know?
Like, what kind of problems are we talking about?
Well, you've got those super rigid hiring processes, unclear job descriptions, even those, what do they call them? Those ghost jobs that just never seem to get filled.
I've got a friend who's actually been applying for cybersecurity jobs for months now. Super talented, but keeps running into those automated systems that just reject her resume because it doesn't have some arbitrary keyword, you know?
It's really quite a frustrating situation because you've got all these companies desperate for skilled cybersecurity professionals, but then the hiring process is so messed up, it drives those qualified candidates away. Like, are we shooting ourselves in the foot?
It really does seem that way sometimes. All right, enough of the doom and gloom. Let's talk about a win for the good guys, okay?
I have a good win. Lay it on me.
Remember that PlugX malware we talked about a while back? It was linked to China.
Well,
Well, it just got taken down.
no way.
Yeah, by an international team of, you know, those cybercrime fighters.
Oh, wow. So a real collaborative effort.
Huge. They got law enforcement and those cybersecurity agencies from all over the world working together on this one.
And they didn't just disrupt the malware, did they? I heard they, went in and remotely disinfected computers.
Yeah, they did. Pretty impressive.
I mean, that is impressive, but also kind of makes you think about, how much access governments have to our devices, right?
It's a good point. Where do we draw the line between national security and individual privacy, right?
Exactly. It's a debate that's not going away anytime soon.
Okay, well, let's get back to the news, shall we? Big alert for all you Fortinet users out there. A critical zero-day vulnerability has been found in FortiOS and FortiProxy.
No, not another one.
And the worst part? It's already being exploited.
Ugh, that's never good. What are we looking at here?
Well, from what I understand, attackers can gain superadmin privileges. So basically, complete control of those affected systems. Fortinet has released patches, but people need to apply them immediately. Like, this is not something to mess around with.
I was just thinking, we've been seeing a lot of these zero-day vulnerabilities lately. It's like a constant whack-a-mole, isn't it?
It really is. The bad guys always seem to be one step ahead.
Well, I guess all we can do is keep patching, right? It's like locking your door, basic but essential.
Can't argue with that. All right, let's move on to something a bit more positive. Cisco is really stepping up their AI security game.
Oh, tell me more about this. I love what they're doing.
They've developed this new platform, and it's designed to deal with all those unique risks that come with using AI, in business.
So we're not just talking about, protecting the data that's fed into the AI, right? We're talking about securing the AI itself, making sure it behaves how it's supposed to.
Yeah, they're calling it model validation. They're
Hmm.
basically making sure the AI's decision-making is on point and hasn't been tampered with.
It's pretty mind-blowing when you think about it, right? We're talking about securing the systems that analyze our data and make decisions for us. Crazy.
It's a whole new world out there. Speaking of new worlds, let's shift our focus to Ukraine.
Ah, yes. A region that's truly on the front lines of cyber warfare.
Their 2024 report really paints a picture of how real cyber warfare is. They had to deal with over 3 million security events last year. Over 1,000 of those were confirmed cyber attacks.
3 million? That's insane. What kind of attacks are we talking about here?
Well, it's everything. Phishing, malware, DDoS attacks, attempts to disrupt their critical infrastructure, you name it. They're facing a constant barrage.
It just goes to show that cyber warfare is not some theoretical thing anymore. It's a daily reality for many countries. And the tactics being used in Ukraine are like a preview of what's to come for the rest of the world.
It's a good reminder for all of us to stay vigilant.
Absolutely. And speaking of staying vigilant, it seems the U.S. is upping its game on critical infrastructure security, too. You hear about these new Secure by Design guidelines from CISA.
No, fill me in. What is that all about?
So basically, CISA, that's the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, they want to bake security into the foundation of our critical systems. So it's not just about reacting to threats after the fact.
So we're being proactive instead of reactive. I like it.
Exactly. It's a whole new mindset.
All right, so we've talked about global cyber battles. Let's zoom in a bit and talk about something a little closer to home. What about the relationship between CFOs and CISOs?
Ah, yes, the age-old struggle.
They haven't always seen eye to eye, but with cyber threats becoming more and more prominent, they have to learn to work together, right?
Right, because traditionally you've got CFOs focused on financial performance and CSOs focused on security, and sometimes those priorities clash. But a major cyber attack can completely wreck a company's finances.
True. Very true. So it's like they need to get on the same page.
Yeah.
How can they do that?
Well, one interesting idea that's been floating around is reverse mentoring. Basically, the CISO mentors the CFO on cybersecurity and vice versa.
Okay, so like a walk a mile in each other's shoes kind of thing.
Exactly.
Love it. Okay, before we wrap up this whirlwind tour of the news, we got one more big story to cover. President Biden just dropped a new executive order aimed at boosting national cybersecurity.
No kidding. What's in it?
Let me tell you, he did not hold back. We're talking strengthening software supply chains, promoting digital identities,
Yeah.
even using AI for cyber defense. The whole 9 yards.
Wow, that's a pretty ambitious agenda.
It is, and the question is, will the incoming Trump administration actually follow through on these initiatives?
That's the million-dollar question. Only time will tell.
I guess we'll have to wait and see. But one thing is clear. Cybersecurity is no longer a niche issue, it's a top priority. And the actions governments are taking all over the world, they really show that this is a global battle.
It's true, and it's not just a battle between countries, it's also a battle within our own organizations. Between departments, even within ourselves, as we try to figure out how to deal with risk in this digital age.
And speaking of risk, our next deep dive is going to focus on something that's super valuable, but often misunderstood, threat intelligence.
Threat intelligence, gotta love it, but also gotta be careful with it. It can be a real money pit if you're not careful.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. So what are those big mistakes that CISOs make? The ones that drain their budget without actually getting any results.
Well, mistake number one is jumping into threat intelligence without having a solid risk management program already in place. You absolutely have to know what you're trying to protect before you even start thinking about gathering intel on potential threats.
That makes a lot of sense. Kind of like you wouldn't buy a security system for a house you haven't built yet.
Exactly. You've got to know the layout, the weak points, what you actually need to protect. Otherwise, you're just swimming in a sea of irrelevant information.
Okay, so it's not just about having a ton of intelligence. It's got to be targeted, strategic. You need to know what questions you're trying to answer.
Exactly. And that brings us to mistake number two, failing to define those clear objectives and requirements for your threat intelligence program.
So basically, figure out how you're going to use this intelligence to actually improve your security.
Yeah, what decisions will it inform? What actions will it trigger? You got to have those answers.
It's all about being proactive.
And having that clear roadmap, you know?
Hmm.
You need to ask yourself, who's going to be using this intelligence? How will it be integrated into our existing security processes? How are we going to measure its effectiveness?
Okay, so first you need that risk management framework. Then you define those objectives. What's next? What other threat intelligence no-nos are out there?
Well, number 3 is overspending on all those fancy data platforms without having the expertise to actually manage them.
I can see how that happens.
Hmm.
Everyone wants the shiniest new toy.
It's tempting, right? But if you don't have the skilled people to make sense of all that data, you're just wasting money. It's like buying a Ferrari when all you need is a Honda Civic.
I love that analogy.
Mm.
So it's not just about the tools, it's about the people using them.
100%. You need those skilled analysts who can look at that data, identify patterns and connect the dots.
Okay, so let's say you've got the risk management framework, those clear objectives, and a team of awesome analysts. What could still trip you up in the world of threat intelligence?
That would be mistake number 4, relying on poor quality intelligence. So that could be using sources that are unreliable, outdated, or just plain irrelevant.
Okay, but how do you know if the intelligence is good? Is there a checklist or something?
There is. It's called CART. Completeness, accuracy, relevance, and timeliness.
CART, got it. So you're looking for intelligence that paints a complete picture, that's accurate, relevant to your specific situation, and current enough to be useful. Makes sense.
Think of it like a weather forecast. You wouldn't use an old forecast to plan your weekend, would you?
Definitely not. So
Right.
you've got to be picky about your sources and always double check those threat intelligence forecasts. What about that final mistake, the one that really sends it all crashing down?
Yes. The 5th and final mistake is dropping the ball on dissemination. That's the part where you actually get that intelligence into the hands of the people who need it.
Oh, so it's not just sitting there in a report on someone's desk, gathering dust.
Nope, gotta get it out there. And you have to tailor it to the specific audience. The C-suite needs that high-level stuff, while those security analysts need those nitty-gritty details.
But it's all about making the intelligence actionable.
Exactly. If you can avoid these 5 common mistakes, you're well on your way to making sure those threat intelligence investments are actually paying off and making you more secure.
Man, we covered a lot today. Ransomware, zero-day exploits, AI security, even cyber warfare. It's hard to keep up with it all sometimes. For someone like me who's not a cybersecurity expert, what are the big things to remember?
Well, I think the most important thing to remember is that cybersecurity isn't just an IT problem anymore. It's a business risk, it's a national security concern, and it can even be a personal safety issue in some cases. So, takeaway number 1, everyone needs to be aware of the risk and take steps to protect themselves.
Okay, so cybersecurity is everyone's responsibility now. Got it. What else?
Well, the second thing is you got to stay informed. Things change so fast in the cyber world. New vulnerabilities are discovered all the time, and the bad guys are always coming up with new ways to attack. So find those reliable sources of information, whether it's industry publications, security blogs, podcasts like this one.
Or even just talking to your IT department.
Exactly. Or that security-savvy friend.
But how do you know who to trust? There's so much information out there.
You're right. It can be overwhelming. Look for sources that are known for being accurate. They cite their sources and they don't try to sensationalize things. And always get a second opinion. If something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
So be skeptical, be discerning, double check your sources. Good advice. What's the third big takeaway?
Vigilance, vigilance, vigilance. You can't just set it and forget it when it comes to security. You have to always be on guard. Look for those red flags and take steps to protect yourself.
So like strong passwords, multi-factor authentication, keep your software updated, all that good stuff.
Exactly. And be wary of those phishing attacks.
It's kind of like locking your doors and windows, even if you live in a good neighborhood.
Precisely. You never know when someone might try to take advantage. And if something does happen, don't panic. Have a plan. Know what you're going to do if your device gets lost or an account gets compromised or if there's a data breach. Knowing what to do in advance can really help minimize the damage.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. I feel like I've learned a lot about cybersecurity, but also that there's always more to learn. It's a little scary, to be honest.
I think that's a good thing, It means you're paying attention. Cybersecurity is a constantly evolving field, and no one can know everything. But by staying curious, staying informed, and taking those proactive steps to protect yourself, you can definitely navigate this crazy digital world with a lot more confidence.
That's great advice. Well, on that note, we're going to leave you with one final thought to chew on. We talked about how governments are becoming more active in fighting cyber threats, like with that PlugX takedown. But that raises some really interesting questions about the balance between national security and individual privacy. Where do we draw the line? It's a complex issue with no easy answers, and it's only going to get more complicated as technology advances.
You're absolutely right. It's a conversation we all need to be having. Thanks for joining us today for this deep dive into cybersecurity news. We'll be back soon with more insights and analysis to help you stay safe and secure in this ever-changing digital landscape.